Get ready. It's time for the Idaho Podcast with your host, Danny Ventura. Welcome to the Idaho Podcast, where we feature the people who live, work, and play in Idaho. Today, my guest is Michelle Bailey, and Michelle has been a real estate agent for over 20 years, and we're going to talk a lot about that, as well as an important law that may be coming your way soon that she knows an awful lot about. So welcome to the show, Michelle.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan.
So you're originally from Northern California, but when did you move to Idaho, and why? And what is the rest of your Idaho story?
Yeah, I moved from California in 2005, and I worked in law enforcement in California and moved here after my divorce for a better place to raise my kiddos, and just kind of fell into real estate then. And actually, my ongoing joke is I left a career where I could piss anyone off and get paid. And then I moved into a career where if I piss anyone off, I don't get paid.
The irony.
The irony. Yes, absolutely. So I moved to Idaho for a better place to raise my kids. And it's really been the best decision I think that I ever could have made for not just my kids, but for me in general.
Mm-hmm. So what keeps you here?
Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. People are friendly. Cost of living is still great, even though, people can grumble about that. It's still pretty awesome.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So you started a career in law enforcement as a dispatcher, right?
Yeah, I was a dispatcher for 10 years in California.
That had to be a different type of work that most of us don't know a lot about, but you've probably, well, at least heard, I don't know if you've seen, but you've heard a lot of interesting things, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, as you know, when you hear those things, your mind paints a picture. And my now ex-husband was a police officer. So lots of stories that it's a different life for sure.
For the same police force, same city?
Yeah, we worked together at 2 departments.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that could be nerve-wracking when you're dispatching when he's working, right?
Yeah, the first department we worked at together, I was the newer dispatcher, and he put out a code called 1199, which is an officer down code. And I was working. And so my job then is to immediately get into action and get other officers there to help. And it's your fiance, right? And so your mind wants to go to danger, and yet you're the person that can help get him help. So that was definitely an interesting scenario.
I'm surprised they allow it, frankly, just because of it seems like, I wouldn't say, kind of a conflict of interest, but mostly out of protection for both of you, just because of the close proximity of the work and the danger of the work, frankly. But
yeah, interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, interesting. Well, and recently we had such a sad event for Officer Tobin here in the Star, and we had the funeral procession that just went on for hundreds and hundreds of vehicles, and thousands of people came out to pay tribute. And just what a sad situation, and senseless as well. And I'm just so thankful for his service, his heart, his spirit. I didn't know the man, but it just on everything that I'm seeing written by those who did know him, he just seemed like an incredible young man, and with his whole life in front of him, with a wife and one child and one on the way. But God rest his soul, and may God continue to protect all the police workers and first responders. Frankly,
Yes.
it's a difficult position, and
absolutely.
And you know that firsthand. So
yeah.
But moving on, so you've been in real estate now for almost 2 decades.
Say that.
Yeah, I told you, you're old. I'm older.
And we're done.
And we're out. Thanks for joining us today. But then the good news for you is I'll always be older than you. So you'll always have that
That's
on me.
true.
So, and you're also very actively involved both locally and nationally. But one of the vice presidents of the Idaho Realtors Association, and you're a vice chair of MLS, Multiple Listing Service Policy for National Association of Realtors. So what do you enjoy most about real estate, and what inspires you to be so involved?
Yeah. One, I've always been involved. I mean, I have run for different positions and offices of service literally since I was in high school. I was a senator in college. I was involved in local politics, in the local city government in my college years as well. And when I worked for 3 different police departments in California, and I was involved in the association side of things as well back then. So when I got into real estate, it just was natural for me to want to serve the industry that I'm in. And I think I do it because I love giving back, and I love educating and training and helping others understand, simplifying things. And sometimes I think my background, I don't know whether or not it served me well or I just moved into it well, right? Or I was a fit. I can remove emotions from a lot of things. So sometimes that may seem like I'm unemotional. However, that's not true. Um, but because I'm able to do that, I think I'm able to help others see things in a different light, and that has helped me be a different leader. I think a better leader for me. And I speak up. You know that about me. I speak up a lot.
I hadn't noticed.
And I have opinions and I share those. And I'm, for the most part, willing to have the difficult conversations that most are not willing to have. And because of that, it's allowed me to step into the roles that I have, and I thoroughly enjoy them for the benefit of most.
Well, I think you are direct, but so am I. And I actually appreciate that a lot in people, because I always feel like at least I know where I stand. And hopefully when you have enough mutual respect, it's not out of a place of hurting one's feelings, or out of a negative heart place. It's
Absolutely.
usually just saying, hey, I care enough about you to just speak truth.
Yes.
And as long as it's in that context, I'm always good with that, because again,
Yeah.
then I always know where you stand, right?
100%. You can't be better unless someone's willing to share that information with you.
Right.
Yeah.
And truth takes courage. I mean, it really does. Again, we talk about Brene Brown on this program a lot, but Brene Brown speaks to that a lot about just having the courage to speak the truth in love. And because when you do care enough about an individual, you will have those tough conversations. So,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
again, that's a huge thing that I do appreciate about you and admire about you. So.
Thank you. I feel the same about you with
Well,
that.
thank you.
Yeah.
Not that you don't already have enough going on. In October, you get inaugurated or inducted or.
It's actually in 2025.
Oh, so that's when it happens.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's
Okay.
another
October
year.
of 2025.
Yeah.
Okay. So you already know that far out.
Yeah.
And you'll become the president
Of
Idaho Realtors Association.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so a huge job. And
yeah. What was I thinking?
So you'll be moving from first vice president to president.
Yeah. There's a middle step and then president. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how will that change your role within the association? I mean, obviously the title.
Yeah. I mean, I've already started trying to travel and get around the state a little bit more, and just talk with other realtors around the state and understand more about what is on their mind. And I think we'll be doing that at a higher level, servicing those around Idaho, and just, really trying to educate and inform, collaborate more.
Mm-hmm. Again, I know I asked you why you're so involved in all of the real estate associations, but what is it specifically about the Idaho Realtors Association that brings you such passion?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was president of Boise Regional Realtors in 2020, and obviously it was during COVID, and that was an opportunity to serve at a higher level that I hadn't experienced, and I enjoyed it. And the next natural step after that is to get more involved at the state level. So I had actually served, I was chosen to participate in NAR's Leadership Academy, which is really challenging to get into. It took 2 years for me to be accepted. And so when I did that, then I decided I'm going to run for NAR director, National Association of Realtors, the director, representing Boise area at the national level. And then at the same time, I ran for a West District vice president, which represented a regional area of Idaho. And after doing that a couple of years, I decided I think I could take on the challenge of moving up the line, so to speak. And so I ran last year unopposed, and that's what we're doing now.
So you're going to get even busier than you are now.
I'm going to get even busier. Luckily, I have a great team around me.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, so that is your primary job as far as what you do for a living is you are a managing partner
Mm-hmm.
of BKT Idaho Realty,
Yep.
where you have about 13 people who report to you and on your team working with you. Tell us a little bit about that and how do you enjoy that part and how do you have time to do all these things?
Well, I'm single. That's part of it.
We'll give out your phone number later.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to be clear, I run a team that, as you said, BKT Idaho, and we are at a brokerage, Keller Williams Realty Boise, because that's an advertising thing I have to make sure is clear. And I don't know how I have time, but that actually, what I say is that is the foundation. That's my responsibility. And if I'm not doing that well or at a high level, then I don't feel like I have the right to do the other stuff that I do. Because how can I help coach or help others in real estate if I'm not even taking care of my own people?
Makes sense.
So we have about 10 agents, and then we have 3 administrative staff, and always looking to hire more amazing salespeople.
All right. Well, we'll tell those people out there if you're
Yeah.
if you're a great real
Give me a
estate
call.
a great real estate salesperson and you want to join a fantastic team, Michelle's the person you want to talk to.
There you go.
Oh, that's great. Well, one of the main reasons we wanted to have you on the show today again was that NAR judgment or decision that's about to come down, I think at the end of July. And again, NAR, National Association of Realtors, which is going to impact across the country how we do things, specifically from a commissions basis. But I know there's a lot more to it, and I know enough to be dangerous. So I'm going to ask you if you would share a little bit about what are the interworkings of that law and why is it so important, and where do we want the judgment to land? Those kinds of things.
Yeah. So I'm going to simplify a little bit. It's actually a court decision, and it was an antitrust. So it's actually a class action lawsuit that was brought against NAR and other brokerages, national brokerages in the country. And NAR settled, several of them, actually, now all of them have settled at this point. And really, the idea behind it is that there's not transparency behind commissions and how commissions work in the United States. We are tasked with explaining that at a higher level than what we've ever done before. So as an example, when I first got into real estate, as you mentioned, 2 decades ago, when I first got into real estate, it was very common for, if I'm working with a buyer, for me to say, my fee is free. You get me for free and I'm going to do all this work. Well, that is not accurate. My fee is not free. I get paid to do something. And the problem is how I get paid has not been very transparent or has been very confusing. And so now moving forward, if I'm going to work with a buyer, one, the buyer has to understand this upfront before they begin even touring a property. So if you start to hear a realtor say, I'm not allowed to tour a property or show you a property without sitting down with you or explaining stuff, well, it's accurate. And you know what? It's actually really good because now we get to demonstrate how professional we actually are and what it is that we bring to the table value wise. So I'm looking forward to that. The more transparent piece is the seller is paying a seller commission and the buyer is paying a buyer commission, the agents involved. The way it's traditionally worked is when a seller lists their property, on the paperwork, it'll say how much they're willing to pay for the buyer agent that is bringing a buyer to their property. So kind of like maybe a finder's fee, right? In any other sales position, this is not something that is unique or even surprising.
Right.
Somehow it's surprising all of a sudden. And I think it's really because we have a low barrier for entry into real estate. And that means that we don't have a lot of initial training for it. So you can pass real estate school and immediately start selling homes and you don't have any training. You have oversight from a broker. But if a broker has 500, 700, 1,000 realtors underneath them, I'll let you kind of draw those assumptions. Again, I'm probably stirring the pot with that comment.
Well, direct, transparent.
Direct and transparent. So, really, the conversation now, and we have been very lucky in Idaho, our forms are amazing in that when I sit down with the seller and I explain how we get paid, it is in writing that my commission is X. And of that, the buyer agent is getting paid X. So, up front, we have that conversation. The challenge moving forward is that now the buyer's agent has to have that conversation with a buyer. And there's lots of challenges with a buyer now paying for their own representation if a seller is not willing to. Now, the second piece of that is that traditionally we have a multiple listing service, MLS, everyone knows MLS, and we would know in the MLS how much a seller was willing to pay a buyer agent for bringing a buyer. I didn't have to call and ask. I just knew. Now we have to call and ask and find out, and that's going to be a gray area on finding out that information. It's going to be a little bit more work. So I think what was intended to be more transparency, in my personal Michelle Bailey's opinion, it's going to be less transparent. But I guess we'll have to go through some growing pains to find that out.
Hmm. So great job at explaining it. I still have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So if it was originally on the MLS, what, for example, if you were representing a buyer and you could check an MLS listing for the several homes you might take that buyer to go look at, you used to be able to see, as you said, what the rate was. Why would they remove that if the idea is to get more transparent? It kind of is.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me either. However, and actually there was a rule a few years ago where that information had to be public. So if right now you were to pull up your local any real estate brokerage or a Zillow or Redfin, like whatever it is, and pulled up a listing, you would be able to see how much the buyer agent will get paid if they brought a buyer. So to me, that's full transparency. I think the challenge comes when in some MLSs, an agent might be allowed to sort properties based on what they're getting paid. And that's not allowed in all MLSs, by the way. Like in our MLS here, we're not allowed to do that. So you just, when you pull up the listing, you know what you're getting paid, and that's the end of the story. But that's not the case everywhere. And even though in our code of ethics, we are required as realtors code of ethics, because not every agent is a realtor, but in our code of ethics, we actually agree to put our clients' best interest first. Mm-hmm. And so that wouldn't be by if I'm getting paid at X% more, right?
Right. So, and historically, the overall total commission for the sale of a home was generally ranges between 4% and 6%. It's sometimes it's negotiated based on price, but typically it's 5% to 6%. I would say more often than not. You could dispute that because you know far better than I do. But at least through my transactions in Idaho, it has specified, as you said, what percentage of that, let's call it 6% just for ease, 3% to the selling agent, 3% to the buying agent. Or in some cases, you might do 3.5%, 2.5%, but it is spelled out. Mm-hmm. In California, it was a little bit different because I think it was just understood that it was split regardless. But again, wasn't spelled out. What was spelled out was the total commission. Again, whether that was 5% or 6%. It didn't go any further than that. Now, you brought up a curious situation where now you're saying a buyer's agent, if they're going to start to show homes that they may potentially have no commission on, will the buyer be willing to pay that agent a fee and over and above? Because typically that comes out of the proceeds from the sale of the home. The buyer, right? It doesn't typically pay for that.
Correct.
Right. So in this case, a buyer would have to come out of pocket. In other words, when there was a zero commission allowed to the buying agent, a buyer would then be in a position where they may have to come out of pocket to get the proper representation. Otherwise, why would somebody represent somebody for nothing?
Yeah.
Right.
No one wants to work for free. Absolutely.
So there's not a mandated minimum then.
No, that would go
That
against
go
him.
again. But see,
The whole antitrust.
how do you think that's going to affect um, buying people that are looking to buy and their relationship with their agents?
Yeah, I think for one, agents are going to have to be crystal clear on the value they bring to the table. And what we're finding is they're not crystal clear on the value they bring. And so there'll have to be some education. I think they're going to have to skill up. They're going to have to be better with their negotiations. And most realtors, we're really good problem solvers, right? I mean, you think things are going just fine, or maybe you haven't heard from your agent, but you have no idea that the deal almost fell apart 3 times. And we're on the phone finding other lenders or dealing with the inspection or whatever problems there are. We have to be better about telling that story so that our clients understand that we're actually doing work behind the scenes. And the fact that we just put a for sale sign in the yard and then said, oh, look, it sold in 2 days. Well, you know what? There was probably 2, 3, 4, sometimes months of work that went into that before it ever even went on the market.
Right.
And I think I didn't entirely answer your question, but I don't remember.
No, I was more curious as really of the buyer's agent.
Yeah.
In other words, what would be the incentive for a buyer's agent to show a home that they were being provided zero commission, or let's just say zero incentive to show that home? So my question is, how do you think, again, based on your vast experience and knowledge, how do you think that's going to affect that relationship between the buyer and that buyer's agent?
Yeah.
You might say, hey, what happens if we want to look at a home that there's zero commission being provided to the buying agent?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Are you going to still show us that home, or are we on our own?
Well, so first of all, what the settlement mandates is that there's a written agreement up front on how that's going to work. And so that conversation should be taking place before you ever even look at properties. And the way it works now, and what I have said to clients since I've been licensed, honestly, is my fee is X%. And if I see a property that is less than that, if it's just a little less, like I'm not even going to tell you about it, honestly. I'm just going to accept that. But if it's significantly less, then I'm going to bring it to your attention and we're going to have a conversation. And then you get to make the decision whether or not you want to look at that property and how you want to take care of the difference. So it should be an educated decision for the buyer to make. I think moving forward, those conversations are going to be clearer. And the challenging part will be with what if they can't afford to pay their agent out of pocket? And what if the seller isn't willing to pay that agent? Because we don't work for free. We have kids, we have, mortgages, all that stuff. And I think we're going to see a little bit of shakeout. Now, Washington State affected some of these changes at the first of the year, and they haven't yet seen a change in much of a change, I should say, in what the seller is willing to pay because they understand that there has to be a cooperation with that. And hopefully we won't see much of a difference either because really, as the way our system works right now with lending and everything, it makes it more challenging for the buyer to bring their side of it.
So in this scenario, then, is a seller obligated to offer a commission?
Yeah, that's great. A seller has never been obligated. It
Okay.
has always been negotiable. It's just like when you go to buy a car. I love this. When you go to buy a car, if I don't have the guts or the confidence to say, will you give me a discount or will you do it for less? Whose fault is that?
Right.
Right? That's what bugs the heck out of me. However, it's always been negotiable. It remains negotiable.
All right. But do you think it'll become more prevalent where you have sellers who will say, I'm just not going to offer any commission? And is that seller still entitled to have their house listed on the MLS?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. The seller should not have a difference in services from their listing agent. They are hiring their listing agent to do their job. And hopefully, the listing agent is also explaining why collaboration is in their benefit.
Mhm.
And it may be more challenging to sell their home. However, it does not mean that it wouldn't go on the MLS. It wouldn't be advertised, and they should be represented at the same highest level, even if they were paying a buyer agent commission.
And so will this affect then? I know you guys refer to them as FSBOs or first sell by owners. Will this affect them in any way? Because I mean, I guess there's no commission in those anyways, typically, right?
Uh, well, often a for sale by owner is willing to pay a buyer agent commission
Okay.
if you call and ask them. You can negotiate that. Sometimes they aren't, but most of the time they're willing. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what the fallout is from that as well.
Hmm. And then how do you think it'll affect first-time buyers or even low-income buyers?
I think that they're the ones that are actually going to be hurt the most. The reality is you bought and sold a few homes yourself. You're an educated consumer. You could probably handle most of it yourself. Even myself being in real estate 20 years, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't buy or sell. I would buy my own, but I wouldn't necessarily sell my own home without having someone help me because my emotions get in the way of making my own decisions. First time home buyers, uh, they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what questions to ask, and they are at a disadvantage. There's only so much information that you can get and research you can do on the internet. And I think they're just going to be taken advantage of. And even though disclosures are required, they don't know that. They don't know about inspections. They don't know about financing and the challenges. And having someone guide them through all that is a big deal.
So my question was going to be, will this make this more or less transparent? However, after listening to you and listening to, it seems like there's a conflict of transparency in my mind, at least in what I'm hearing. Because like you said, in some cases it was meant to be more transparent, but in the process of trying to be more transparent, it's gotten more complex and less transparent. For example, on the MLS, there'll no longer be the percentage shown to the buying agent. So overall, though, in your professional opinion, is this going to be more transparent or less?
I don't know if it's going to be more transparent. Hopefully, we'll have better conversations with our clients, and that should have more transparency for sure. And that will hopefully give them a better understanding of what it is that we do every day and how we best serve them.
Mhm. And was this antitrust suit, was this brought on because of the fact that some states are just not good at it? Is this what's caused it, or because it seems like it's making things more complex than it needs to be?
I
So,
get it. There are not every state is created equal, as you know.
and thank God for Idaho.
Amen. And not every state even has buyer representation. So, not all the contracts, not every state has a contract to represent a buyer, which is what I mean by that. And in listing agreements all around the country, they may not say that you are collaborating or cooperating with an agent bringing a buyer. So, it may not be clear to everyone. And this will be clear moving forward. I want to go back to your comment about the MLS because I think a lot of consumers believe that all we do is find the property for them. And that is literally a small percentage of what we do. I often tell my clients, you are probably actually going to find the property because you are on the internet all day and all night because you are the most excited about what the change in your life, right? Not that I'm not excited, but you're in it. You're in the middle of it, and you're going through properties, and you're looking online, and you're looking at things that come on before I've even had a chance to look. So you may find that property. My job is to get you the property for the best terms and price based on your circumstances and current market conditions.
Got it. So when this decision comes down by the end of
The
July,
judge is actually given preliminary approval. Preliminary.
so if it's approved and if it's goes through, do you expect any further DOJ challenges?
I think that they can put in their briefing on, how they feel about the decision. and they probably will. And I believe there's still an opportunity for others to do the same. So yes.
Okay. Interesting. So are you happy about it, or have no feeling either way, or are you Switzerland? How does this affect you in your day-to-day business, being in this for 20 years?
Yeah, I think it's just changing things a little bit, honestly. I welcome the change. No one really likes change. I mean, let's be real. But I welcome the change of having the real conversations and being able to level up our industry, which is what I think this will actually do. It's going to force realtors to have conversations that maybe they weren't as crystal clear about before, or maybe our clients weren't as crystal clear about before. Yeah.
So again, because of your experience, because you lead a team of over 10 agents, uh, what would be your best advice to folks looking to either change agents or searching for an agent for the first time? What would be your advice to them in that process? What should they be looking for to vet and qualify who they work with?
That's a great question. I think you have to, most important, sit down and meet them and just see how comfortable you feel with them and see how they answer your questions. Are they rushed? Do they make you feel stupid? If you ask the same question a couple times, how do they respond to that? How responsive are they? If it takes several days to get back, well, in a hot market, you may have already missed a property. How are they directing your lending questions? Are they referring you back to a professional? I think it's really important that they are able to answer your questions in a timely manner and in a way that you actually feel like you're being heard and not just serviced.
That's good. It's amazing because I look through the lens of my wife and I watch a lot of House Hunters on HGTV.
Ay, ay, ay.
I know. We just enjoy the show for what it is. Forget the drama part of it. But it's hilarious to me where I'll just use an example where a buyer will say to the agent, "My house has to have dormers," for example. I've always wanted a home with dormers. I saw it in a movie. I have to have it. And then they'll show them the 3 homes that you see on TV. Not one of them had dormers. And I'm thinking to myself, are you not listening? They said that was the number one important thing to them. And yet they still buy the home without dormers. It's pretty incredible to me.
It's hilarious. And by the way, those are totally staged
Okay.
on purpose.
I figured.
Yeah. And a funny story, actually, years ago, when I first got into real estate, probably my first 2 years, I had a buyer moving from Oregon, and he said, "Michelle, we want a cabin in the woods. We don't want to be near people. It has to be a single level. We're getting older. Um, find us whatever." So if you're familiar with Idaho, we originally were looking up in the Idaho City area, which is, about 30 minutes outside of Boise, 30, 45 minutes, depending on the weather. We went from Idaho City to Marsing, which is the exact opposite side of the county, to Caldwell. I mean, we were everywhere. The house that they ended up buying was a 2-story in a subdivision with HOA. And we still joke to this day. It's been 18 years. I just talked to him last week. And he said, "You didn't listen to me. These stairs are getting kind of hard." So, yeah.
But they bought it.
They bought it. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's funny. Well, the Idaho podcast, we always like to provide the tip of every show, and it's because it's the acronym of the Idaho podcast, TIP. What would be Michelle's tip for our listeners?
I was trying to think about this. Michelle's tip for listeners, I would say really ask questions and seek to understand really what it is that you're trying to get to your end result.
So just across life.
Just across life in general.
Ask questions and seek to understand.
Before you judge.
Mm-hmm. I like it. Yeah, there's a lot of judgment today, and we could use less.
Absolutely.
Michelle, thanks so much for joining us today on the show. I really enjoyed learning more about you, as well as learning more about this NAR decision that's going to come down. And hopefully it'll be more transparent for everybody involved, consumers and agents alike. And hopefully it's a simpler process, not more challenging process for everybody involved. And congratulations on becoming president of the Idaho Association of Realtors. That's a big job, and I'm glad you're going to be the one leading the charge, and that you actually have the role in 2026. Well, congratulations and good luck. Best wishes on that for sure. So,
appreciate that.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you for joining us on the Idaho Podcast. Be sure to check us out on the idahopodcast.com. We have some great information on there. And also, I'd like to ask you to sign up to be a subscriber and be the first to know about all my new guests and anything that's happening new on the Idaho Podcast. I hope you have a great week. Take care.